Audie Murphy's life began in hardship long before he became America's most decorated soldier. Born on June 20th, 1925, in Kingston, Texas, Murphy grew up in a poor farming family during the difficult years between World War I and the Great Depression. He was the seventh of 12 children, and his parents, Josie Belle Killian and Emmett Murphy, struggled to provide even the basics. The family often went hungry, and young Audie quickly learned the meaning of sacrifice and responsibility. His father was unreliable, frequently absent, and eventually abandoned the family for good, leaving his mother to raise the children largely on her own. With such a large household, Audie and his siblings had to take on adult duties far too early. Audie dropped out of school by the 5th grade so he could earn money to help the family survive. He worked long hours in cotton fields under the hot Texas sun, earning only pennies for his labor. Despite his youth, he carried himself with determination and resilience that would later define his character as a soldier. When his beloved mother died in 1941, the family was broken apart even further, with some of the younger children sent to orphanages. Murphy, devastated by this loss, realized he had to find his own path forward. He wanted to support his siblings and escape the cycle of poverty. At this moment, with World War II breaking out, the military seemed like both a duty and an opportunity. Audie Murphy dreamed of joining the military as a way to change his life, but the journey was not easy. At first, he was rejected because of his small size and boyish appearance. Standing only a little over 5'5" and weighing barely 110 pounds, he looked too frail for combat. But Murphy refused to give up. His persistence finally paid off when the Army accepted him on June 30th, 1942. This marked the start of one of the most extraordinary military careers in American history. He trained hard and quickly gained a reputation as a disciplined and fearless young man who took his duties seriously. In 1943, he was assigned to Company B, 15th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division, and deployed overseas to North Africa. There, he faced the harsh realities of war, brutal heat, disease, and rough terrain, in addition to enemy attacks. Despite the challenges, Murphy never backed down. He quickly proved himself in battle, showing leadership qualities beyond his years. By July 1943, he was promoted to corporal, and soon afterward, he took part in the Allied invasion of Sicily, one of the most important campaigns to break Axis control in the Mediterranean. His bravery on the battlefield caught the attention of his superiors, and before the end of 1943, he rose to the rank of sergeant. These early years shaped him into the fearless soldier that history would remember, a man who always put duty above personal safety. As the war intensified, Audie Murphy's courage became legendary. In 1944, he played a major role in Operation Dragoon, the Allied invasion of southern France. Time and again, he risked his life to protect his fellow soldiers, displaying incredible calm under fire. His actions earned him several decorations, including the Distinguished Service Cross and 2 Silver Stars. By September 1944, during the Allies' push through northeastern France, Murphy's leadership stood out even more. He often volunteered for dangerous missions, rescued wounded comrades, and single-handedly halted enemy advances. One of his most famous moments came in early 1945 during the battle for the Colmar Pocket in France. Despite overwhelming enemy forces, Murphy climbed onto a burning tank destroyer, directed artillery fire by radio, and held off a German assault for over an hour, alone. He was wounded, but his courage saved his unit. For this act, he received the Medal of Honor, America's highest military award. By the end of the war, Murphy had become the most decorated American soldier, receiving over 30 medals and honors, including the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, and foreign awards from France and Belgium. Yet despite the fame and recognition, Murphy remained modest about his achievements, often saying he only did what needed to be done. Still, his reputation as a true hero made him a national figure, admired for his bravery and sacrifice. After World War II, Audie Murphy's life took a surprising turn when Hollywood came calling. With his fame as a war hero, studios saw him as a natural fit for war films. At first, Murphy was hesitant, but eventually, he agreed to give acting a try. His career gained momentum in the late 1940s and early 1950s, especially with his most famous film, To Hell and Back, 1955, based on his own autobiography. In it, Murphy played himself, giving audiences a powerful and authentic portrayal of his wartime experiences. The film became a huge success, making him one of Universal Pictures' biggest stars of the decade. But behind the glamour, Murphy struggled with deep emotional scars from the war. Today, we would recognize his condition as post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. But at the time, it was little understood. He had recurring nightmares, sleepless nights, and often carried a pistol for protection, even at home. The pressure of Hollywood, constant public attention, and his unresolved trauma made personal life difficult. His first marriage to actress Wanda Hendricks ended in divorce after only 2 years, largely because of his emotional instability. Murphy later found more stability with his second wife, Pamela Archer, with whom he had 2 children. Yet even then, his life was never fully at peace. He continued to act in films, mainly westerns and war stories, but the burden of his past never left him. While Audie Murphy earned respect in Hollywood for his authenticity and down-to-earth nature, he also faced challenges in the movie industry. He came from a poor rural background, had no formal training, and wasn't raised in the theater world like many of his peers. Despite this, he worked hard to prove himself. He admired actors such as James Stewart, who had also served in the military and carried himself with humility. Murphy valued modesty, honesty, and respect, qualities he expected from those around him. However, not every star lived up to these standards. Among the actors Murphy met, the one he disliked the most was James Cagney, a legendary Hollywood figure known for playing tough, fast-talking gangsters. On the surface, Cagney was admired by many for his sharp wit and screen presence, but Murphy reportedly had nothing but disdain for him. According to those who knew him, Murphy found Cagney arrogant and condescending. Unlike Stewart, who treated everyone with kindness regardless of their background, Cagney often acted superior, especially toward outsiders like Murphy, who had not come up through traditional acting circles. This clashed heavily with Murphy's values. He didn't care much for Hollywood status games. He respected people for their character, not their fame. This difference in attitude set the stage for one of the most surprising feuds in Hollywood history. Murphy's dislike for James Cagney ran deeper than personality differences. In private conversations, he admitted that he hated Cagney more than anyone else in Hollywood. One reason was Cagney's attitude toward war and soldiers. Cagney did not serve in the military during World War II, a fact that Murphy, who had risked his life countless times, found hard to forgive. While Murphy never publicly condemned men who didn't fight, he privately judged those who seemed unpatriotic or dismissive of the sacrifices made by soldiers. Rumors also circulated in the 1940s that Cagney had communist ties, although no evidence was ever found. For Murphy, who had buried friends in Europe fighting for American ideals, even the suggestion of disloyalty struck a nerve. He felt that Cagney embodied everything wrong with Hollywood: arrogance, self-promotion, and a lack of respect for real heroes. Adding to the tension, Cagney reportedly mocked Murphy, calling him "soldier boy" in a dismissive way, as if Murphy was only pretending to be an actor. Murphy could handle being called a war hero, that was true, but he couldn't tolerate being insulted for something he had no control over. To Murphy, Cagney's behavior showed a lack of basic respect. This feud was unusual for Murphy, who generally avoided conflicts in Hollywood. But when it came to Cagney, he simply could not let go of his anger. Despite the animosity, Murphy never allowed his feelings about Cagney to dominate his public life. In interviews, he rarely spoke about him directly, often dodging questions or giving short, polite answers. But in private, he made his hatred clear, calling Cagney the one person in Hollywood he despised most. For Murphy, the feud was less about Hollywood competition and more about personal principles. He believed respect had to be earned through character and sacrifice, not fame or wealth. In contrast, he admired fellow veterans like James Stewart, who managed to combine talent with humility. As Murphy aged, he continued acting, but also became a strong advocate for veterans' rights, using his fame to bring attention to the struggles of soldiers returning from war. He lived with the scars of combat until the end. Tragically, on May 28, 1971, Murphy's life was cut short when the private plane he was on crashed in Virginia during poor weather conditions. He was only 45 years old. His sudden death shocked both Hollywood and the military community. Audie Murphy's reputation as the most decorated American soldier of World War II was not just a headline. It was backed by a long list of incredible achievements. By the end of the war, he had received 33 awards and medals from the United States and Allied nations, making him a living legend at only 21 years old. Among these honors were the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars for Gallantry, and the Bronze Star with an oak leaf cluster. He was also awarded the Purple Heart 3 times for wounds he sustained in combat. On top of that, France and Belgium honored him with medals for bravery, recognizing his role in liberating their countries from Nazi occupation. What made Murphy truly remarkable was not just the number of medals, but the courage behind them. He repeatedly placed himself in danger to save others, often standing his ground when retreat seemed like the only option. His leadership on the battlefield was not based on rank or training, but on example. Soldiers followed him because they knew he would never ask them to do something he wasn't willing to do himself. Murphy's military record became a symbol of sacrifice and grit, inspiring not only his fellow veterans, but also a nation that was rebuilding after years of global conflict. Yet for all the glory, Murphy remained humble, often brushing aside questions about his medals with a simple statement: "The real heroes are the ones who never came back." This modesty only added to his legacy, contrasting sharply with the way Hollywood stars sometimes chased fame. After returning home, Audie Murphy found himself in an unusual position. America celebrated him as a hero, and Hollywood producers believed his story could translate into box office success. At first, Murphy was hesitant. He had no acting experience and was still struggling with the memories of war. But encouraged by friends and supporters, he gave acting a chance. Murphy's early roles were small, often in westerns or war dramas, where his natural toughness and authenticity fit perfectly. Over time, he grew more comfortable in front of the camera. His big breakthrough came with To Hell and Back, a film based on his own autobiography. Released in 1955, it was one of Universal Pictures' most successful films of the decade, largely because audiences wanted to see Murphy tell his own story. Playing himself on screen gave the movie a rare authenticity, and his understated performance won respect. However, fame came with a price. Murphy did not enjoy the spotlight the way many actors did. He disliked Hollywood parties, hated gossip, and never felt like he truly belonged. To him, acting was a job, not a lifestyle. Unlike others who craved attention, Murphy was happiest when he was away from the cameras, spending time with his family or focusing on veterans' issues. Hollywood demanded charm, networking, and showmanship, things Murphy had little patience for. This tension between who he was and what the industry expected of him created stress throughout his career. Behind the fame and decorated medals, Audie Murphy battled a private war of his own. Today, we know his condition as post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, but in Murphy's time, it was often ignored or misunderstood. The horrors he had witnessed in Europe, the loss of friends, the constant danger, the killing, never left his mind. He suffered from nightmares and insomnia, sometimes staying awake all night because he was too afraid of what he would dream about. He also had a quick temper, often triggered by loud noises or stress, symptoms that were common among combat veterans. Murphy once admitted that he slept with a loaded pistol under his pillow, a sign of how unsafe he felt even in civilian life. Instead of hiding his condition, Murphy eventually began to speak publicly about it, making him one of the first well-known figures to bring attention to what soldiers endured after returning home. This honesty earned him the respect of veterans who felt unseen by society. Still, his struggles made relationships difficult. His first marriage ended in divorce largely because of the emotional weight he carried. Even in his second marriage, though steadier, Murphy continued to fight these inner battles. His courage on the battlefield had been clear for the world to see, but his courage off the battlefield, facing his trauma while under the public eye, was equally remarkable. In this way, Murphy remained a soldier for life, always fighting, though the enemy was now inside his mind. To understand why Audie Murphy disliked James Cagney so much, it helps to look at who Cagney was. Born in New York City, Cagney grew up tough, learning to survive in crowded neighborhoods where quick wit and attitude mattered. He brought that background to Hollywood, where he became famous for playing sharp-tongued gangsters and streetwise characters. His style was bold, loud, and energetic. On screen, Cagney often dominated every scene, using his unique voice and aggressive mannerisms. Audiences loved him because he seemed real, the kind of man who could outsmart or outfight anyone. Critics praised him as one of the greatest actors of his generation, but while his acting style made him a star, not everyone admired the way he carried himself off screen. Cagney could come across as arrogant, dismissive, and unwilling to respect people outside of his circle. For someone like Audie Murphy, who valued humility and honesty, this attitude was difficult to accept. Cagney represented the Hollywood world at its most polished and artificial, an industry built on appearances rather than substance. This was the opposite of Murphy's own life, which had been defined by real sacrifice and survival. Where Cagney acted like a tough guy, Murphy had been one on the battlefield. That contrast alone created tension, but when combined with personal slights, it grew into genuine hatred. Accounts from people close to Audie Murphy suggest that his dislike of James Cagney was not just professional, but deeply personal. Cagney reportedly belittled Murphy in social settings, treating him as though he was a novelty, a war hero playing actor, not a real performer. On more than one occasion, Cagney called him "Soldier Boy," not in admiration, but in mockery. To Murphy, this was a direct insult to his identity. He was proud of being a soldier, but he also worked hard to build a career in Hollywood. Cagney's dismissive tone suggested that Murphy would never truly belong in the film world. Murphy was already